Welcome to the Spectacular Entrepreneur Show, and we're so happy to have you here today. I am Nanette Polito, the host, and I am a business consultant and partner of Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky franchise of Asentiv, and it's really an honor for me to have this role. And I'm always going to have resident experts. Mike Macedonia will always be with me. He is a co-founder of Asentiv. He's a best-selling author. He's a speaker. He's an entrepreneur. He built his company from a small training consulting firm to a franchise of 60 locations in 20 countries. Isn't that awesome? He gives back by volunteering, and he really does it kind of in a fun way. He holds a position on the board of directors of the Wisconsin Big Cat Rescues. Yes, those are the big cats. And my favorite thing about Mike in the story is that he participated in the Leadville Trail 100 mountain bike race. So if any of you are out there and you know that race, you know how grueling it is. Ready? Mike did it twice. So it's pretty darn amazing. So first, let me say hi, Mike.
Hey there, Matt.
How are you?
I'm doing well. Greetings from California.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. And then my second resident expert is Eddie Esposito. He's also a co-founder of Asentiv. Eddie is an expert in relationship development and communication skills, and he's a longtime business and personal coach. One of the things about Eddie is Eddie lives and was born and raised in New Orleans, and of course he survived Katrina. And when that hit, he was able to get his family safely to Atlanta, Georgia for a temporary amount of time. But during that time, he commuted back and forth to really help those entrepreneurs that were devastated by Katrina and help get them back where they needed to be and get them all thriving. And I'm really proud to say, and proud of him, is that every entrepreneur he worked with did get their business back and are thriving. So I love that story about him. He's also a chef, and he's cooked for 4 presidents and 1 first lady. So Eddie, how are you? It's great to have you here today.
I'm good. Glad to be here.
And then we have with us as our resident expert, and you can see standing next to Mike is Danielle Foster of Designs by Danny, and she is a branding expert, and we are so happy to have her here. And you know, I have to laugh because when she gave me her bio, she calls herself the transplant from New York because she's now in Northern California. However, I lived in California and realized one thing, that everybody in California really was from the East Coast, so they're just all transplants out there. But we're really glad to have her here. She works in business with business owners who are struggling in communications of the essence of their company and to help them create the powerful dynamic visual representation that captures their essence of their company. And part of that, I got thinking when I was reading hers, was also about, she had a life-changing experience at 18. She completely lost her vision for 7 days, 14 hours, and 23 minutes. And it really made me think that probably now when she's working with her customers, vision is always an important part of who they are and where they're going. So Danny, nice to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So let me just tell you a little bit about our show before we get into our show. This is our first one, and we're really happy to have you here, so thank you for participating with us. Some of you may remember the old networking cafe. Well, this is who we are now, and we're glad to have you here, and that's probably why you were invited, and we're glad that you came back, so we hope you continue and stay on with us.
Now, this is a show really centered around the entrepreneur's life, and that life doesn't only exist when they show up to do what they do, but it shows up in their entire life. So we're going to be addressing some of those issues, from wearing all the hats that get worn by the entrepreneur. It's a unique creature, the entrepreneur, having so many hats to wear, particularly early on in developing their companies or company, as well as what about the life balance? What about the family and everything else we do to keep our life to be a spectacular life while we run that amazing business? Mr. Esposito.
Yeah, right on. I think that's what the focus of the show is. It's the daily life of the entrepreneur and what they go through and what experiences they have, all the way from the struggles, but you know, we really want to see some victories too. So when you've been offered out or have received some help and it's turning things around, man, we'd like to hear some of those stories too. Here's what happened to me. Here's what somebody advised me somewhere along the way, or I got some help someplace, and here's what I do because now I'm able to take those vacations, and here's what it's looked like. we want to see something about the victories. That's just as much as we want to see about all the challenges.
Eddie, I'm glad you brought that up too, because behind me you'll see a white wall. And the other day I had this idea with this wall that I thought, you know what, it would be great that if our people who are watching our show, our community, if they could let us know their victories, I'll put them behind me on this wall. And we can start creating a record of all the victories that are created through this show and Asentiv.
Right, and I think that once we figure this all out, and obviously we're, as Annette said, this is our first time out, we want to show some film clips of those victories, and as well as take some of the questions on by film as well. So it's going to be a really interesting format for us, and we want to do it based on what you are requiring from us.
Exactly, exactly. So the first thing that we decided to tackle was branding, because branding right now is close and personal in our life, and that's why we brought Danielle in, and she is an expert. So we asked her, said, you know, what do you think we should talk about? And she told us the top 5 things entrepreneurs need to think about in branding, and she sent me a list. So it's really an awesome discussion for us because we were formerly the Referral Institute, and actually now we are Asentiv. So we're going to talk a little bit about this, and then we're going to talk with Mike and Eddie about how the things we had to go through and they went through in our rebranding. So let's start. Danielle, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Awesome. So the first topic that she brought up was, do you need a brand? Danielle, do you need a brand?
You need a brand. Branding is so important. And what I really want to acknowledge here is that we live in a branded world. Everywhere you go, everywhere you look, you're bombarded with different logos, different experiences. All of these things play a role in branding. So as an entrepreneur, it's really your responsibility to make sure that you're in the forefront of your customer's mind, whether it's the look and feel of your company, the experiences they have, how they come in contact with you. All of those things play a role in branding. So I absolutely think it's very important.
And something I saw in the notes that you sent me too was you stated it's your responsibility as an entrepreneur and business owner to seize every opportunity to position your company in the customer's mind. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. With every company, they have a plethora of competitors, right? So it's really your responsibility to, 1, distinguish yourself, and 2, really know yourself. How are you presenting yourself? What are you talking about? And how are you talking to your customers? That is your responsibility as the business owner. So when you're out there in the community, when you're out there talking to potential clients or customers, how the experience you give them and how you're talking to them, how they came into your life as well, is all part of the branding process. It's all little touch points that really build up the brand.
That's awesome. And then one other little note here you had that I actually love too is branding goes beyond declaring a competitive advantage. It demonstrates it. What do you mean by that?
Absolutely. So a lot of times different companies will say, I'm the best in this, or, this is what I do and this is how I do it. But the demonstration part of it is really what's going to capture your audience, your clients. So giving them experiences by not just, throwing a logo out there and saying, I'm the best business because I said so. You have to show them. You have to show up. So being out there in the community and giving these clients and customers the best experience that really comes from the values that you have as an organization is going to elevate the branding more and more and more.
So, Mike, I want you to step back for a minute because we're going to get into the rebranding here in 1 second. But I have a question for you. When you and Don and Ivan and Eddie first developed the Referral Institute, what made you brand it as the Referral Institute initially?
That's a good question. Back when we first started, it was the early 2000s, and our deliverable and our audience were coming for training. That's really all we had. We were simply there to instruct them, to give them insights and some good tactics and techniques to grow their business. But it was kind of like an institution. I didn't talk about Referral Institute because our sweet spot was around referrals. It was a learning environment, so it felt like an institution, particularly being founded here in the United States. Now, since then, there's been a whole list of transformations our company has gone through.
Danielle, let's next talk about why do companies need to rebrand?
Well, there's several reasons why a company would rebrand. Some of the more obvious ones might be, they acquire another company, they're getting a partnership, um, kind of more obvious ones like that. But there's other reasons, such as, maybe the clients and customers they were working with 10 years ago, they've evolved, they've grown, they've changed, and they're still the target audience, but they have different needs now. And to be competitive and stay in the market, your company has to grow and change and evolve. So part of the rebranding is really making sure that everything that you're representing is still what you're doing in the organization. So if you grow and you have more products, if you grow and you're offering different products to different audiences, that's another reason to rebrand, because you want to make sure you're representing yourself in the best light possible. So usually within the 5-10 year mark is when a lot of companies will go through that rebranding process, because they have grown and their audiences have changed or have grown. So there's a lot of different reasons to rebrand, but I think around the 5 and 10 year mark is a really good time to kind of give yourself that self-assessment and find out if your branding is really matching your organization and what it stands for and the values.
So, Mike, now I'll bring you back in. So why did you decide to rebrand the Referral Institute into Asentiv?
Yeah, well, a lot of it's just like Danielle was saying, things have changed. Things have changed for our company, from how we deliver, what we deliver, and most importantly, why we're delivering what we're delivering. It's much more robust, and it's much more in tune with the entrepreneur's needs. It's also taken place globally, and an American word like Referral Institute doesn't make the best brand when you're operating in Asia, Africa, Europe, Australia. So there was a number of reasons we went into this. And I think it's important to understand that when we started this project, which was actually over 2 years ago, we're just releasing it now, but over 2 years ago we started this project, it was really quite simple and quite fast. Okay, so not exactly.
Yeah. We're going to get to Eddie here in a minute about the challenges. So, yeah.
Well, I'll just say that what really started putting this together is, first of all, an acknowledgement that it needed to happen. We wanted to change our look and feel. It didn't even include the name at this point, just the look and feel of how we were showing up. And the one thing we did, one lesson I get from the branding is, we invested to have the research done. We went out, and this is really a matter of letting other people take over and interviewing the stakeholders. Who are the franchise owners, consultants out there, clients, the general public? What do they think, and what do they feel, and what do they want to see? And all of this work really started the platform for rebranding for us.
And so, Eddie, he started the platform. What were the challenges you then had?
Well, what he's saying is one, that's the big thing, is getting out of the way. I mean, up to that point, it wasn't necessarily our culture, because just like most people, I'm going to reflect back on the people who may be listening right now. When you started out, it's pretty much your ideas, and here's where it needs to go, and this is what I got to do, and you kind of build that thing in your way. And then when you're ready to go through the next tier of it and realize I really have to listen to what my customers and my stakeholders and client base has to say, when you get to that level of realization, that's when you get ready to go to the next level, I think, in your business. And that's where we were. So we did go out and have the company poll all of our stakeholders, and it was on everything from the logos to the tone of voice. What was it that we were really communicating? Did it line up with our mission and vision? And so knowing that ahead of time, is that what needed to be done, that helped us interview and find the right branding company for us that would represent all of the aspects that we have, because we are on different continents and in many different countries within those continents. So all of that had to be considered. So we needed somebody, first off, with that kind of look that could get that kind of information to communicate the kind of message that we wanted to. So a lot of that was done ahead of time. I'd say the second piece of the research that came to mind, besides us getting out of our own way, was that, as Mike said, they realized that you do need it, and the fact the way people buy today, and the way they buy today, and it doesn't matter how they come to you, whether they find you on the website to begin with, or if somebody actually referred them to you person to person, they're going to your website and they're going to YouTube, not YouTube, they might do that as well, but they're going to Google you, and the numbers are in the 70s to low 80% for each one. So, and they will disqualify you if what you are saying you represent doesn't match up when they find it there. So it was obviously very critically important to us that we get it right. So we did have to turn it over to other experts, knowing that they would also do research in addition to what we did.
So Mike, I have a question for you. How did you get the franchise owners to buy in?
Did we? I don't know, did we?
Well, I can tell you I bought in immediately. I was all in, but I'm sure I wasn't. I have a business partner who didn't initially buy in quite as quickly as I did. So how do you get them to buy in?
It's tough to give up a name you've been marketing for sometimes, many years here, and it is something that we keep into consideration. But I want to point out that it wasn't just a name change. It actually started with a brand change of how we were showing up in conjunction with redoing and actually completely building our online platforms, which was quite big and quite robust project at the same time. And it was only in the middle of that we came up with the idea with all of these changes, what about the name? And coming up with a name that really represented who we are and meant nothing to anybody else but us. So we were like Google created their name, we created a name called Asentiv. And there's a number of things I can say around that, but I'll go back to your original question, the buy-in. The buy-in was not that big of a challenge when we told them what we were doing and why we were doing it. Okay? And then we came and we showed them samples of the things that were going to be created. And I think that's when we got the most amount of wows. Like, wow, look at this work.
It was awesome.
And, and I did this as a joke, but it was kind of a joke. I was at one of our conferences. We had branded our training center and all Asentiv stuff, okay? And then in the middle of it, I took that stuff down and put the old Referral Institute stuff in. And you can feel it. You can feel that tired, heavy brand that we had before. It was gone. It was time, as Eddie would say, to do a New Orleans funeral.
The second line was going out. Right.
I have one last question on this topic, and that is, Eddie, would you say that rebranding was a milestone or a stepping stone?
Well, I think it's always a stepping stone, just a larger one than most, maybe a cornerstone, but a big rock nonetheless. And because it is a reflection of a lot of different things, Mike's alluded to some of them. Essentially, what we grew up was different than what we started with on our idea, and that's a good thing. And our hesitancy to do it all along was, listen, if you've got a well-established name and company and it doesn't match up to what you're doing today, somewhere in your head and in your conscience, you know you have to do that, but you also know along with that means changing a website, changing cards, changing logos on your trucks and stickers and all the things that go with it. It's a costly item, not to mention a long-term period of transition and grief. And other people have to buy in and have education. So it turns out to be a milestone, or actually, like I said, it's a cornerstone. But, we know this is not going to be the last time that we adjust the look. I don't know that we need to adjust the name anymore because we set it up better this time. And we certainly have, got the right brand messages going on, but they'll evolve, I'll say that. It's always an ongoing path, and Danielle could probably tell you a lot more about that one.
Yes, we like to say it's complicated, it's expensive.
Yeah.
We're going to make it happen.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I have to tell you, I love the new name and I love the new logo, so I'm all in, and I think that anyone out there looking at it is just wowed by it, so that's awesome. For time's sake, let's keep moving here. Danielle, we want to talk about your next topic, which is one that I just love, is why is the vision and mission so important to branding of your company?
Well, for me, both of those things are basically the two pillars that hold up your brand. So those are one of the first two questions I ask any company that I go into, whether it's completely just fresh branding or rebranding. And that's because you need to know where you are and you need to know where you want to go. And specifically for Asentiv, you guys train this and teach these concepts all the time. So with branding, it's the same thing. Your mission is who you are right now, what your values are, what you're doing and why you're doing it. And your vision is where you want to go. So having those two pieces solid and being able to articulate those things and share those messages, not only with your internal staff or employees, but also with your customers and your clients and your target audiences, that's only going to elevate the brand more and more. If you're trying to build a brand around something that you don't even know what you're building or what you have, it's not going to work as well. It's not going to work. So those two things are really important.
So Eddie, can you tell us a little bit about the new name and how you came about the new name?
Sure, certainly. And Mike started to allude to it earlier. Was first off, we had to have a name that didn't mean anything. And we had a team of our top producers or worldwide people in for a meeting one time, and we were tossing around different names. There was many of them that came out, and there was one that was related to this one that came out. And then we went to a meeting that was held at Ivan Meisner's place, and Dawn, Mike, myself, and Ivan were there, and the name got turned around. And we actually settled in on one that was different from this, but it didn't rest real well with Dawn, and she kept pushing the issue, and then
so those who do not know Dawn Lyons is the other co-founder of Asentiv. I'm sorry, Eddie, I just wanted them to know who she is.
Right, so she pushed the issue a little bit, and Ivan came back with a variation that was just slightly different, and it worked for everyone. And then came the other tests. Was it taken? Was it used on social media? Did it belong to anybody on any other space? And when we Googled it, I think there were like 1,000 hits or something, which is next to nothing. It was amazing that it all started to fall into place. But it also had to have characteristics that represented the things that Danielle was talking about, which represented our brand, our tone of voice, the upbeat, the amazing and spectacular and all of that. And the Asentiv does lend itself to ascending and some other things. So it sounded right, it worked right, it didn't have any competition for the name. We were able to register it and trademark it here in the United States. And so it had to meet a lot of characteristics, but it's not the easiest thing to come up with. And it did take a few meetings, but actually it went a little easier than I thought it was going to go, thanks to Dawn, who actually more led that charge, I'd say, than anyone.
Well, and Mike, you have the logo right behind you, and I would love you to explain to the audience the meaning behind our logo, because some of them may look at it and go, what does that all mean? What does it look like? What is it?
On my screen, it looks like the logo might be cut in half. So maybe if we look at your PowerPoint, and you can see those arrows, the way they come in from the bottom, come in from the top, the side, all go in the same direction. And that's what we do. We bring people in from different spots and different places and spaces in their business and bring them forward in a collaborative way. That we specialize in businesses collaborating. So that's the feel and the look that we created there with some nice, what I think are nice bright light colors to complement it.
Yeah, the colors represented diversity. The different shapes represented different types of people or different professions or different, just lots of variety and diversity coming together in the middle, as you said, as the two arrows come together, and then all together moving forward. And I think that's the essence of it. Is we create communities, and then when we do come together and we work together, we will all move forward. So the logo really communicates what we are really all about.
And for me, what I see in there is I actually see a person in there, and with that green arrow just pointing them forward, like go get them, because green is go. And I just love it for that reason. It inspires me, and I hope it inspires a lot of people. It's awesome. So Danielle, your next topic is, what is your value proposition? So what is your value proposition?
What is your value proposition? So this is pretty important. This is the distinguishing factor between you and your competitors. It's what sets you apart. It's why someone would choose to work with you over your competitors. And it's also about kind of bringing all the pieces of your vision and your mission and your values and your company together to offer a product or service that is different, and I don't want to say better, but different, and gives them the right experience to the right audience. So being able to articulate what your value proposition is and building a brand that really supports that is really important, and it's going to set you apart from your competitors.
Danielle, do you feel like you really, in some ways, have to work with some of your clients to figure out that they don't understand what their value proposition really is to their competitors?
I do. I think a lot of times when I ask the question, it's honestly the first time that they maybe have thought about it in a really long time. Maybe when they started their company 5 or 10 years ago, their value proposition was different. Asentiv started with training, that was their value, but now people who are involved in Asentiv know that it's a lot more than just training. So a lot of times the question will also spark that, those wheels turning for the entrepreneur, and what am I giving my clients and customers, and do they feel that they're getting that value as well? So that's the other piece of it that's really important, is you kind of have to step out of your own way and with this question as well, and find out what value you think, or what value the clients and customers are actually feeling that they're getting from you, because it may be different than what you think you're providing, and that's the distinguishing factor between them and their competitors.
And Mike and Eddie, in just a couple of few words, can you give them some ideas of how they could start to really think about their value versus their customer or their competitor?
Yeah. Well, here's the first advice I give. Poll them. Okay, ask them. And it's very simple. Make it very concise. What is the greatest value you get working with me or my company? I'll say it again. What's the greatest value? It's singular, okay, and greatest value you get working for me. You start polling your clients to find that information, you'll know. They will tell you the greatest value that you're bringing, and it may not be what you're thinking.
It's most likely. I'll tell you one thing, it won't be the way you say it. And that's another thing, is you got to find out how they say it so you know how they think about it, so you can say it that way and they'll hear it. I know that sounds like a bunch of gibberish, but that's the absolute truth.
Oh, it is. I've done this repeatedly with lots of clients and stuff, and guess what? The biggest value they get from us was not referrals. No, it was not referrals. The biggest value they got from us was, number one, was business. Okay? And I was really surprised to see that a lot of them found that they got a voice, the ability to speak about their business, like Danielle was saying, how to message things in a way that they could articulate personally and through social media or through their website. So, yeah, it might not be what you think.
Yeah, and probably not how you would say it even. So, for example, in his case, his instance right there, so if that's what they said, then I want to go out and communicate. I help people get more business, not more anything else, because that's what they told me. Those were the words they used. It's really important, because our view of what we think they get is probably right. We're just probably not communicating it in a way that they have been conditioned to listen to it, just our way. So it's different.
So that is a great starting point. So audience, I hope you heard what Mike said to you. Poll them, and find out what they're hearing and what they're thinking. So that way, that'll really help you.
If you're going to take this exercise on, if they're going to take this exercise on, especially when it comes to branding, and the branding company themselves are not out there actually talking to not only your clients but your stakeholders themselves and doing the interview, because they get if you send out interview questions yourself, you want to send out, as Mike said, 1, 2, maybe. But if the branding company's not doing a more extensive interview to get the feedback, then you're probably not getting the best information you could get.
So you might be looking at another branding company, possibly.
Well, correct. And that should be something. And Danielle's also told me the same thing. It's just a standard practice, and I've seen it not done. And I don't know how you could communicate the message properly if that kind of groundwork wasn't done first.
Exactly. So for time's sake, let's get into the last topic, and that is, who is your audience? So Danielle, can you elaborate on that a little bit, please?
Yeah, so this kind of goes back to what we've been talking about all throughout, but it's really important to know who your audience is, and not just the typical 35 to 45 male or female. It's really what they want to see from you. How are they showing up? What types of people are they? What are they interested in? How are they spending their money? How are they spending their time? All of these things formulate the audience, and that's how you're going to communicate with them. So a lot of what Eddie was saying was, there's different ways of communicating things. You can say the same thing in 5, 10 different ways, but in order to strike that chord with your audience, you need to know who they are. So you need to survey them. You need to have experiences with them to be able to really communicate your message directly to those people. So knowing everything as much as possible about your audience that you can is only going to help you give them the best experience, and that is really what branding is. It's an experience with an organization. So knowing your audience is really important.
So, um, I, I have like two questions here I'd like to ask at once. This one is the one I really want the answer to. For both Mike and Eddie, I want you to answer this for me because you are two different people, and I'm sure that you have two different reasons they could be similar. But what was it about our new brand, our new logo, the things that we were doing that resonated with each of you?
Well, for me, one of the things, going back to that look, it was something to me that was resonating, inclusiveness. And that's an important part of our culture. We refer to it as radical inclusion, not just to allow people in, but to bring them in. And when Eddie was talking about the diversity of all those colors, diversity of people and occupations and persons, all coming together, that's our radical inclusion. That culture, I think, is coming through with this new look and brand.
Yeah, and I'll add on to that. Notice they're not all coming together the same color. So not only does it allow for the diversity, but it allows for the person to be who they are in their thoughts, and within reason, coming together and everybody moving together forward. So
Yes.
the individual colors stand out, for a lot of reasons. I think for me, it was just so light, airy, modern, welcoming, not cutting edge in the techno sense, but cutting edge in the way that we're going to go together as the way the modern business world thinks today. And that's what because it's been, for an entrepreneur, and that's why the name of the show is as it is, it's not about business or your life. For an entrepreneur, the business and the life are really one. So we move together as one thing. And that's what kind of the whole oneness thing was really resonating with me.
Awesome. Well, our audience has actually been giving us some questions here. So I'm going to take a moment and ask you some questions from our audience. Danny, do you have any thoughts on or explanation on branded content?
Branded content, to me, that means how you're speaking, what's your tone of voice, and what messages you're giving to your audience. So branded content it's a really great question, actually, and it's really important to go through your content and make sure that it's all in alignment with the values that you have. Does it go back to your mission? Is it all in the same path? So having that content written properly with the right tone, with the right message, with the right feeling, and all of that in there is really the next step in branding, is what I would say. It's really going to bring all those pieces together.
And then our next question is really it's for Mike, but I really think both you and Eddie can answer this. It's, hey Mike, what have been your key learnings from this rebrand?
Well, the first is that you want to do your research. That's number one. Number two, it doesn't happen overnight. And number three, it doesn't take 100% consensus. Okay, when the research has been done, when the experts have been engaged in making it happen, you make a decision, not everyone is going to resonate with it. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes these are people that just maybe not going to fit within our system. Okay, but it's not about looking for 100% consensus. It's about getting it as close to the mark as you can, and then doing everything you can to communicate it. Those are the lessons that I walked away with.
That's wonderful. Eddie, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'm laughing because within the four of us, there wasn't necessarily total 100% agreement. That's why you do put it over into the hands of other people and trust the experts in the research. I got to tell you, that was so important. Not only it takes longer than probably you think it does, but the fact that you have the research to back it up and say this is why we chose that logo, because there were other concepts developed that some others in our team liked better, actually. And the audience, 80-something% to 20% approved the other one better, and that was the one that landed. So, it's different than you're used to operating as an entrepreneur, because honestly, biggest lesson I learned is we're not expert here. Let people who know what they're doing guide us in that way.
I have another question. I'm going to throw it to Danny first. What's the difference of international branding versus national branding?
So for me, I'm just gonna say this. If you think you're not an international company, then you're wrong because everybody's on the web and anybody can see your website from anywhere. So to a certain degree, everyone's international, right? Um,
Right.
the difference between international and national branding is the way you choose to um, communicate with those audiences. Do you want to be communicating on an international level or do you want to be communicating nationally? For me, that's really the difference because, like I said, the website makes everybody international, makes everybody global. But knowing who your audience is and who you want to communicate with is going to be the distinguishing factor of how you're presenting yourself and if your branding is going to go one way or the other.
Awesome. We have two more questions, and this one is also for Danielle. How would I know if my branding is obsolete or outdated?
So the benchmark, the easiest way for me to give you a benchmark would be after 5 to 10 years. It's a really good idea to do a self-assessment and find out, pull your clients and your customers, survey them, ask them questions. Is all the products and services that you're offering still the same, or has it evolved? Has it grown? If there's been growth, which with that 5-year mark, usually there is, and things have changed and evolved, then it's a really good time to refresh the brand, minimally refresh it because you want to stay relevant with your clients and your audiences. So I would say a great way to do that is give yourself a brand assessment and really ask yourself the tough questions and find out if you're still in alignment with all of those things and if the look that you're presenting is how you want to be seen out there. And that to me that's the easiest way to know if you're ready for a rebrand.
And then our last question was, Danielle, what specific steps should I take in preparation before contacting you for the branding of my company?
I think to give yourself a good foundation before you go into the branding process, I would say, know what your mission is and know what your vision is and be able to articulate it. Not only, just internally with your employees or whatever that looks like, but also to your audience and know who your audiences are. These things are, like I said, they're the pillars of branding. So the more solid you are in that foundation, and the more you can give that to your branding team, they're going to take that and run with it. And the one thing I want to say about the research is there's 5 steps in the branding process, and research takes the longest. A lot of people think that the logo development and the different assets, marketing assets that are developed, it's the piece that takes the longest, and that's not true. It's all about the research. It's about the foundation, and then you just build upon that. So to get started and to give your branding team the best start possible, I would say knowing those things and being able to articulate them and being solid in them is the most important part.
And I just have, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Eddie. Go ahead.
To add on to what you said, it's absolutely positively critical in developing sales. If they will discount you or discredit you, because the world today is much more visual than when Mike and I started with the company 15 years ago. When we used to talk about a company, we would draw a picture in our mind about it or about who we were dealing with because there was no way to go check it out easily. Well, now, click of a button, they can see everything. So you better have what they're expecting to see there. It's way more critical, in my estimation, particularly for the entrepreneur than it ever was, because the world is so visual and they get their messages over 70-something% visually as well. So it's more to it than the visual look, but all that research has to communicate visually what you're trying to say. Otherwise, they'll discount you right off the bat. It's absolutely critical.
It is absolutely crazy. And Danielle, one last thing before we wrap up here and get into some exciting news is that you said something the other day when we were speaking, but I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was a great line. You called our brand the shorthand. I don't remember the rest of it.
Yeah, so what I said was the logo is basically a visual shorthand of the company, right? So
I thought that was genius.
Yeah, you can't possibly communicate all of the values, the messages. You can't possibly communicate all of those things in one visual. However, it's the one quick thing that people are going to remember. So it is important to have as much of that in that visual as possible. But like I said, it's just a visual shortcut. It's just it's gonna make them remember who you are and what you stand for. But everything else within the branding is what builds that up. It's where the messages come in. It's how you're talking to your audience. It's all those things. So the way I describe logo development and branding is that the logo is the visual shorthand, and then the branding supports all of that.
When you said that to me the other day, I thought that was just genius. So I promise to remember it from now on because it's great verbiage. So thank you very much. Danielle, I do want to thank you for being here with us today. And I have to say that there is some exciting news that Danielle, Mike, and Eddie have to share. So I'll let you guys take it away from here.
Yeah.
About the giveaway.
We were celebrating our first launch of the show, and thank you for participating today. And Danielle came up with this great idea. As a matter of fact, not only was it a great idea, okay, it's an overwhelming offer that she's going to be presenting to you. So I'm going to let her describe it, and then we'll let you know how you could take advantage of this offer.
Yeah, thank you. So what I decided to do for the first show, I'm really thankful that you guys had me on the first time, so it's pretty exciting. What I'm going to do is give away a $5,000 branding package. And what that means is that you're going to get the research, you're going to get the logo development, the asset development, all of those things are going to be in there, the colors, the typography, and why we chose all of those things are going to be part of the research process. So I decided to give that away. So the way that you would do that is go to the website, which I believe is on the slides, and you're going to fill out a form. And minimally, when you submit the form, you're going to receive a self-audit, so a branding self-audit. So you can go through those questions. It's a PDF with questions, and make sure you answer them honestly. And at a minimal, you'll be able to go through your brand and find out what the areas are that you can work on and how you can prepare, and are you ready for a rebrand, and is it right for you, and all of those things. So I'm really excited to be able to offer that today, and I hope you guys can see the value.
Can I win? We're excited.
But we will be announcing in March when the winner is going to be, and the link is actually in the chat session, and it will be in your follow-up. So you will have the link there.
So I just want to, now you're going to get a free assessment, okay, that you get to do, a self-assessment to see where you stand. Okay, so right off the bat, you're going to get some value there. Now I'm going to give you a challenge. You're going to take that self-assessment. How about if you get out of the way and had some of your stakeholders or clients also do that assessment for you? You really get some great insights. Now, by taking that assessment, okay, you get the opportunity to possibly win a $5,000 branding package. Here's the good news. This is our first show. We don't have thousands of people here. Your chances are actually really good by taking that assessment. So we're so grateful for Danielle to make that offer and make that suggestion. So I hope you take advantage of it.
Awesome. Well, I just want to thank everyone for being here today, but it doesn't end here. We are going to stop the recording here for a minute, but we're now going to go backstage for the next 15 minutes or so. And if you'd like to speak with us, ask us any questions, ask Danny any questions, we are all here to answer them for you. So stick around and ask us whatever it is you want, and then be sure to register for the February 6th show in February, because on that day, on February 16th, we're going to actually be talking about, do you ever feel like you're working and working and working your butt off, but all you're doing is standing still? I know I've been there. And so it's going to be a great discussion that day to help you start moving forward in productive ways that will make you feel like you're actually having that awesome life you really want to have. So with that, I again just want to thank everyone. Mike, Danielle, Eddie, thank you for being here with us today. Greatly appreciate it. Audience, we thank you too. And just remember, from now until then, go forth and prosper. Remember, you're never alone because we're here. Thank you very much for watching.
Ciao from California.